snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I'm here today to do a book review. Actually, I'm going to be reviewing two books because they're part of the same series, and that is book number 2, The Mad Ship, and book number 3, The Ship of Destiny, which are both in the Liveship Traders by Robin Hobb. So I'm going to put this one down because it is heavy until I need to talk about it. So let's start off with The Mad Ship, which is book number 2 in the series. As you guys know, I read book number 1 not very long ago. Absolutely adored it. Definitely one of the best books I've read ever. Threw Robin Hobb straight into my favourite authors. She's just stunning, amazing. And this book was so good. I absolutely adored it. It was phenomenal. I just had such a great time reading it, and yeah, I'm going to tell you guys why. So this one was definitely my favourite in the series, but that doesn't mean that I didn't love the third one as well. I loved them all. They were all amazing. The whole series was just perfection. So let's talk about The Mad Ship. This is once more the continuation of the Bestrit family, and we follow them once again. They are our main characters. Most of them are family members or they're married into the family, and they have a strong connection to the Bingtown traders. They live in a world where live ships are a common source of trade. People who live on the Cursed Shores, which is where the Bingtown traders live. Some of them, who are sort of Bingtown trader families, will actually have allied with the Rainwild families, and therefore they have live ships between them. Live ships are these kind of magical ships where if the captain of the vessel dies on the deck 3 times, then the ship itself will actually come to life and the figurehead will start to be animated. It can talk, it can have its own emotions and feelings, and it's a pretty interesting concept, as you would imagine. So they use these to traverse all over the place and use them for trade, because live ships are actually a lot better than regular ships in that they do not tend to get as many issues on board. They don't tend to let ropes snap or fray. They don't tend to stray into waters that are not necessarily the best place for them to be, bad currents, etc. Because this ship has its awareness, it can tell the sailors on board it when it needs help. So it's a really, really cool concept. And we are following a particular family from the Bingtown traders called the Vivacia family, who have a live ship called Vivacia, who quickens quite early on in book number 1. So she is alive at the point of this book. Getting into what this book is all about, I really, really enjoyed the continuation of the story. It picked up straight after where it left off, which was great because the first one wasn't necessarily a cliffhanger, but I definitely wanted to dive straight into the rest of the story and find out exactly where it was all going. And the time that we are following the Bestrit family is a little bit of unrest in Bingtown itself, because there has been a lot of immigration into Bingtown recently, with new people coming there and kind of destroying the customs that Bingtown holds dear to itself, and bringing all sorts of things like slavery and just new ideas that the Bingtown traders are not very happy about. So it's a time of unrest and turmoil, and we're following the family through this, and we're following each of the individual characters in the family as they each go through their own struggles and their own trials. Life in this part of the world is fairly simple. Trade is the main order of the day. That's how they get their money. Usually the women will stay at home and they will just raise the family whilst the men go off and they make the fortune with the live ships. But the Bestrit family is not necessarily a normal family, and in fact we have a lot of very, very interesting, strong and charismatic women in the family who actually have to take over running a lot of the trade and a lot of the financial problems that they have because the lack of men in their family. Each of these women, and even the young men who we follow from the family, have their own goals and their own ideals that they want to achieve. And one of the best elements about this book and this series generally is that the characterization that Hobb manages to employ is just utterly flawless. The whole world feels convincing. All of the characters are just exceptionally well developed, and I really, really, really enjoyed reading about them and seeing how they grew as people and faced all these horrible things and came out the other side. Ship of Magic, the first book in the series, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars to, so I was definitely hoping that I was going to really, really enjoy this, and it did not disappoint. I absolutely fell in love with the story, and it was definitely my favourite in the series. It had so much going on, and from the halfway point onwards I just felt like the story took off, and there was revelation after revelation that I just was not expecting and could not have anticipated, but absolutely was blown away by. That's not to say that the first half of the book is boring, But it is to say that Robin Hobb definitely builds her stories up. She starts off not necessarily slow, but things are not happening as much as when you get to the second half of the book and everything explodes, everything goes nuts, everything is crazy, but it's amazing. So that's the way she seems to write, and that's the way that I love to dive into a big book. I love it when it is such a big build-up that when you get to all these revelations, it just is fantastic. I did not even know that Robin Hobb could weave all the elements of this book together so well, but this was honestly about 1,000 times better than the first book, and I gave the first book 5 out of 5 stars, so this is honestly one of the best books I've read in my life. It's not even in this year, it's not even in the fantasy genre. In my life, this is one of the best books I've ever read. It's just fantastically woven. I would highly recommend this to you guys. If you've never read Robin Hobb, I would say you can definitely start with the Liveship books. You will spoil the ending of book number 3 in Vivacia. There are some things that happen in that story that will get spoiled if you start with the Liveships, but I honestly think the writing difference between Vivacia books and these ones is just humongous, and I much prefer the writing style of these ones personally because it's multiple POV and she just characterises everyone so well. It's just fascinating, whereas Fitz as a character is a little bit more, he's kind of, you like him or you don't like him, I think, and for me, I don't like him that much. So yeah, I definitely feel like these are better books in my opinion by far, but I know that there are loads of people out there who absolutely adore the Fitz books as well, and obviously I've only read the first trilogy of that. I definitely intend to carry on with the Tawny Man series and then the Fitz and the Fool series, so I'm looking forward to going back to Fitz and seeing how her writing is better, hopefully with the third trilogy than it was with the first. But honestly, I would say that you can start with this series, because I know a lot of you guys are going to ask me that, and I would say you can start with this series if you want to, and if you don't mind spoiling the Vivacia book, then you can definitely start with this one. One thing I absolutely adored about this book was that every revelation that we got was just timed perfectly. There was never anything that was dragged out so long that I was really bored. There was never anything that I felt was just never going to be explained. Everything was explained, and everything was explained in good time at the perfect point of the story for it to not only make sense, but also to be captivating and exciting for us as the reader. The writing itself is intense, it's beautiful, it's stunning. She definitely has a great prose that she uses, and she seems to be a very competent writer in terms of making the world seem very realistic and making the characters utterly believable, because each of them have their own flaw and each of them have their own problems with their personality and problems with their lifestyle that they have to face and they have to overcome in the story, and it's great to see that. Also, there were some passages and phrases that some of our characters said that absolutely did mystify me and awe me and really did make me think. So there were moments where a certain character was talking and what they were saying was just utterly enthralling, and I really found myself rereading those sections and just pondering on them for a couple of minutes or even hours at a time. So it was definitely a thought-provoking book, and there are some interesting themes like slavery that are really well done and well handled in this book, so I'd highly recommend it for that reason if you're interested in seeing that topic handled in a really good way. Of course, as I've said, this world focuses a lot on trade and particularly live ships. One of the interesting things about live ships is that everything that happens on board their decks, the ship itself will absorb. So if there's any bloodshed on their deck, then that will affect the mental health of the ship. So it does deal with mental health, and I really enjoyed seeing the fact that all of these actions that humans took on board the decks really did affect the ships, and they could make them go mad, it could make them really panic, it could make them unhappy or sad or angry, and they really were like their own personality, which was great to see. Some of the characters who particularly were well developed in this book include Malta. Malta is definitely one of my all-time favourite characters ever. She starts out as this really bratty child who doesn't understand the ways of the world and is very focused on herself and very self-centered. She has a lot of ideas of what her life should be like and how she should be treated and how worthy she is of being treated in a wonderful way and being treated like a princess, etc. She's very sort of snobbish and she looks down on other people who are not as good as her. But throughout the course of these books, she develops so much. She definitely was the one who had the most strong development from a really different personality style into a much more likeable one and a much more enjoyable character to read about. But I just enjoyed seeing the way that her story unfolded and the way that she became the person she does in the end of this book and then developed further into Ship of Destiny. We also have Rain Kupris, who is a newish character that we haven't really come across until this book, and I really enjoyed getting to see his point of view because he is actually from the Rain Wilds, and the Rain Wilds are a big mystery up until this point. We don't know know an awful lot about them. We don't really know what they are, and we don't really know the mysteries of their race, but there's all sorts of strange things that rain wilds have, like they've got all these crazy jewels that are really magical seeming. They've got these kind of lumps and bumps on their faces, so they keep veiled everywhere they go. It's a really interesting and strange culture that they have, and we don't know an awful lot about them, so seeing a Rain Wild point of view really did help us to understand a lot more about them. And Rain himself is a really conscientious and fun character, and he's very intelligent as well, so I enjoyed him a lot. Then we have Paragon. Paragon is a ship, and he is actually a ship who is no longer sailed. He actually lives up on the beach because when he was out sailing, he drowned all of his family and he drowned everyone on board of his decks because he went mad. And so when he came back to Bingtown, everyone was utterly horrified by the fact that no one was with him. It was just him. So he's been kept up on the beach for a very long time because everyone believes he's mad and he wouldn't be able to sail again without killing the crew on board of him. So he's a really interesting and quite bitter character. He definitely has some scenes and some passages that he says which just made me laugh out loud. He is a great character. He's definitely one of my all-time favourites, and I think he just has such an interesting story and backstory, which we find out a bit of in this book, but that definitely gets developed even more so in Ship of Destiny. And I absolutely loved seeing the way that he grew and seeing the way that he had to address some of the things that he's had to face in his past, and he had to really confront them head on, which he really didn't want to do, but I just adored the way that he was developed and the way that he became a really interesting character. So definitely one of my favourites, and Malta as well. Both of them just utterly transformed from the characters they began as, but just so well done that it's utterly convincing. And one thing I will say about Paragon is that there are some moments that were just so sad involving him and so heartfelt and so emotional that I really did connect with him as a character, and I just felt so upset for him and so emotionally attached to him, and it was just so good. It was so good. Then we have Vivacia. Vivacia is the Vestriate family's live ship, and she has only recently quickened. She's only recently become alive, which means that she's quite young. She's a bit naive, and she definitely gets manipulated a lot over the course of these books, especially this one. So I didn't enjoy her personality changes that much, but I could understand why they were done that way, and I felt like she was a really interesting character from the start, and then she got really irritating in the middle, and then she got more interesting as it went on. Her personality definitely changes a lot because of the humans on board her decks, and because of the things they do and the things they say and the things that they teach her. And I really enjoyed seeing that, but I really didn't like the direction it took her personality in to begin with. And for me it was an internal struggle with her because it was kind of the opposite of Malta. I really liked her to begin with, and then she shifted and I didn't like her so much, but then she shifted back into this other different sort of personality where I did like her a lot. So it was a really interesting character change for her, and especially in this book she really does develop a lot more and she becomes someone completely different, and she definitely has this worldly experience behind her by the point of the third book, where she's done a lot of things, she's seen a lot of horrific things, and she's been to a lot of nasty places, and she has her own personality sort of arising throughout all of that because of everything she's been through. So I really, really enjoyed her in this book, and I felt like she was massively developed in this book compared to the one in this book. So yeah, that was good. Then we have Etta. Etta is a young whore who has been taken on board of Captain Kennet, a pirate's ship. And Etta is a character who I didn't think that much of in the first book because she wasn't overly developed or overly mentioned. But in this one, she definitely becomes a really major player and a major character. She takes on some massive changes in her personality, and she learns some really interesting and new skills. She also shows her really dark, nasty, brutal side. She's really, really brutal at times, and she's really, really survived all these horrible things in her life, and you can see that that's affected her in a massive way, in the fact that she really is quite prepared to do anything and quite prepared to go to any lengths in order to get what she or Captain Kennet, who she's in love with, needs. I really enjoyed seeing the ruthless side of her. I really enjoyed that she was just prepared to go to any length, but she was quite scary at times, and I really did think that if I'd met her in real life she would have scared me. Particularly in book number 3, I felt like she had some great moments where, particularly towards the end, she had to face some realities that she'd been denying, how she confronted that, and I really enjoyed seeing her personality change strange when she did kind of understand these things. Amber is a woodcarver who lives in Bingtown. She's moved there fairly recently, and we don't know an awful lot about her backstory. She's a really interesting character because she's one of the characters who brings out some of the most thought-provoking passages. She has this kind of aura around her where she just seems like a kind of disconnected person from the rest of the world. She doesn't really integrate herself that well, but she has some really interesting skills. The ability to carve wizard wood is one of them, and wizard wood is what live ships are made out of, so that's a pretty interesting skill. And she also just has this kind of aura about her and this kind of strange personality where you never really truly know where she's from and what her ideals and goals are, but she's a very mystical person, she's a very peculiar person, and until book number 3 we really don't learn an awful lot about her, but book number 3 does give us more information and we do get to learn a lot more about where she comes from and potentially some links to the Vivacia books. I won't say any more than that, but potentially there are links with the Vivacia books, so that's really interesting, and I think her personality and her character are some of the most intriguing throughout the whole series. Like the Rainwilds definitely intrigued me, but because we got a Rainwild POV in book 2 and 3, that was kind of not necessarily as much of a mystery, whereas Amber is always a mystery and she's always an interesting character to read about because she's just strange, she's a little bit odd and she's a little bit quirky, and I enjoyed her a lot as a character to kind of give that weird sort of mysterious vibe to the book. Then we have Serilla. Serilla is a character who gets introduced in the Mad Ship, and she is a companion to the Satrap. The Satrap essentially by name rules Bingtown and all the surrounding areas, but the Satrap is really not a nice guy. He's quite a nasty, spoilt brat really, and so Serilla doesn't really trust him. She doesn't really like him as a character, and he actually doesn't treat her very well at all because all he wants is to have sex with her, which is not that lovely. I will say that there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this book, such as rape, there's a lot of stuff such as forced manipulation, slavery. There are a lot of bad things that happen in this series, but if you can get past that and if that's fine for you to read about and you don't necessarily enjoy it but you're fine to read it, then it's got some such brutal moments and some such creepy, horrible moments, disturbing moments that are just so well described that they feel real and they feel as brutal as they seem, and it's crazy how good Robin Hobb is at writing these scenes and just making them feel believable and convincing you as the reader that these characters are real and they're going through something horrible and they're going through these nasty, horrible things, and you have to just connect with them. So Serilla as a character, she doesn't like the Satrap that she works for, and she kind of plots that she wants to escape his rule. She wants to go to Bingtown and she wants to be her own person, but of course when he finds this sort of thing out, he doesn't necessarily react overly well to that, and she has a lot of trouble fitting into Bingtown society and a lot of trouble kind of defining who she wants to be as a person and what ideals she wants to uphold as a person. Especially in book number 3, she definitely developed from the kind of person that she believed she wanted to be in book 2 into the person that she found herself, and she knew who she was as a person, she knew what ideas she believed in, and she knew what she wanted to represent in book number 3. So that was great, and I really enjoyed seeing her development as a character. And then finally, the final kind of characters that I'm going to talk about are the Serpents. The Serpents in book number 2 and 3 were just fantastic. Their storyline, which I said in book number 1 didn't interest me that much, but in book 2 and 3 it really, really did. It was so captivating. Things started to get utterly crazy. Things became just utterly mad and insane and crazy and cool and awesome, and so many things happened with them that I was just captivated. I was blown away by what was going on. I was interested in the links between these books and the Vivacia books. I was interested in the way that their story evolved. I guessed a few things, but I was blown away by other things, and just the whole of the Serpent story was fascinating, utterly fascinating, and I loved it. So yeah, I can see why she had a very small, slow build-up in book number 1, so that in book number 2 and 3 everything was just explosive and crazy when it was revealed, and the Serpent storyline quickly became one of my favourites, for sure. It was fantastic. So on the whole, these books are amazing, just utterly flawless, perfect, amazing, fantastic, incredible. I love them. I literally have never come across a series that I think I love as much as this one. The characters are just so real to me. You could ask me about any of them and I'd be able to tell you a lot about them because I just know them so well after reading these books, and I would highly, highly recommend that you guys check this out. If you haven't read the series, obviously, please do check it out. It's amazing. I love it. If you have read the series, then let me know your thoughts because I would love to talk more about it. I would love to talk about your theories in the comments, but it would just be amazing. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I still don't know because I've only read this first series, the Vivacia books and this series, but I love Robin Hobb. I love where she's taking the series, and I'm so looking forward to going into the Tawny Man books very soon. I've ordered them, they're on the way, I can't wait to pick them up and hopefully love them as much as this series, but it's just been amazing. I obviously gave these both 5 out of 5 stars. They are flawless in my opinion. Robin Hobb's amazing, everything's amazing. These books are so good, guys. These books are so good. So let me know your thoughts if you guys have read them. I would love to hear them. Thank you all so much for watching. My arm is hurting from holding up those books, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little